You don't flinch anymore. Not at bad news, not at disappointment, not at someone walking out. People around you notice it. They call it calm. They call it stoic. A few of them call it cold. But you know what it actually is? Like, it's experience, accumulated, unannounced, and permanently installed. You've been through things you don't talk about, not because you're hiding them, because most people wouldn't understand them. And you stopped needing them to. You've lost things that couldn't be replaced, made decisions that couldn't be undone, trusted people who proved you wrong, survived seasons that were supposed to break you. And you're still here, not louder, not softer, just different. You don't have the same relationship with fear that other men do. You've already met it. You've already sat across the table from it, and you've already watched it leave without finishing you. That changes a man. Not in a way you can explain at dinner, not in a way that fits a conversation about the weekend, but in a way that shows up in how you carry yourself, how you respond to chaos, how little you need from the people around you to feel okay. You've outgrown the need for life to be easy. That's not something you decided. It's something that got decided for you. You don't panic in situations that send other men sideways. You don't catastrophize when things go wrong. You don't spiral when plans fall apart. You assess, you adjust, you keep moving. Other people watch that and assume you don't care. You care. You just don't perform it. You've learned the difference between a problem and a crisis. Most of what people treat as a crisis is just a problem. And most problems have a next step. You find the next step. You take it. That's not a skill you were taught. It's a skill you earned. You've also gotten quieter. Not because you have less to say, because you've learned that most conversations don't require what you actually know. So you hold it. You observe. You let the room move the way it wants to move. Men who haven't been through much need to be heard. You've learned that being heard is rarely the point. Here's what you've also stopped doing. You've stopped explaining yourself to people who were never going to understand you anyway. You've stopped chasing relationships that drain more than they return. You've stopped trying to earn respect in rooms that already decided what they thought of you. You've stopped performing strength for an audience that can't recognize it. You don't do that anymore. Not out of bitterness, out of clarity. You know the cost of giving your energy to the wrong places. You've paid it. You're not paying it again. That kind of discernment doesn't come from reading about it. It comes from living through the version where you didn't have it yet and watching what that cost you. There's a mechanism underneath all of this, and it's worth naming it clearly. When a man goes through sustained difficulty, real difficulty, the kind that doesn't resolve quickly, his nervous system reorganizes, not dramatically, quietly, over time. His threat detection recalibrates. Things that used to feel dangerous no longer register. And what does register gets processed faster, more accurately, with less emotional noise attached to it. Men who survive serious adversity don't just recover. They often end up with a different relationship with risk, a sharper sense of what matters, a reduced tolerance for things that don't. But here's the part that rarely gets discussed. The same recalibration that makes you steady in a crisis also makes you harder to reach in ordinary moments. You've developed what you could call emotional economy. You don't spend what you don't have. You don't perform what you don't feel. You don't generate warmth on demand for people who haven't earned the temperature. That's not coldness. It's conservation. You've learned that your energy is finite. You've learned what happens when you don't protect it. So now you do. You also stopped apologizing for it. Not to people who called it selfish. Not to people who needed more from you than you had. Not to anyone who mistook your limits for a character flaw. You stopped explaining your boundaries to people who were using the explanation as a way to argue you out of them. You also read people differently than you used to. You notice what's not being said. You track inconsistencies. You catch the gap between what someone claims and how they actually move. That's not cynicism. That's pattern recognition built from watching the same patterns play out. You've been lied to by men who were convincing, disappointed by people you counted on, let down at moments when being let down cost you the most. And because of that, you don't require much from people until they've demonstrated they deserve more. You give people room to be who they are. You watch. You measure quietly. And when someone proves themselves, you're loyal in a way very few men are capable of. But that loyalty has to be earned now. It doesn't come automatically. It isn't given away. Some people experience that as you being distant. What they're actually experiencing is you being careful. There's also a grief underneath this that most men don't let themselves acknowledge. Not grief for a person, grief for the version of yourself that existed before. The man who trusted quickly, who believed things would work out because he hadn't seen enough of the ways they don't, who moved through the world with a kind of openness that felt natural before experience taught him otherwise. That version is gone. You don't walk through a room the way you used to. You don't start a conversation with the same assumptions. You don't extend trust the way a younger man does before he learns what trust costs when it's misplaced. That's a real loss, not a weakness, a loss. And most men who've been through too much never fully let themselves acknowledge it. They just carry it, quietly, the way they carry everything else. Acknowledging it doesn't make you soft, it makes you accurate. Here's what's true about who you are now. You're not damaged. You're calibrated. The distance isn't dysfunction. It's discernment. The quietness isn't withdrawal. It's selection. The steadiness isn't detachment. It's what happens when a man has already been through the thing most men are still afraid of. You carry weight that other men would buckle under. You do it without announcing it, without asking anyone to notice. You've built an inner architecture that took years to construct. And you built it under conditions that weren't ideal. Without a manual, without much help. That's not something to explain to people. That's not something to justify. It's just who you became. And it's enough. A man who has been through too much doesn't need to prove it. He doesn't need the room to understand him. He doesn't need his past to be validated before he can move forward. He doesn't need credit for surviving. He just keeps going. Quieter than he used to be. More selective, more grounded, less impressed by what impresses other men. He doesn't need anyone to witness what it took to get here. He already knows what it took. That's the thing about men who've been through too much. They don't need the story validated. They lived it. They carried it. They came out the other side without a trophy and without an apology. And they kept going anyway. Not because the weight got lighter, because they got stronger than the weight. That's not inspiration, that's just what survival looks like when it finishes the job. That's enough. Still standing. No fanfare, no finish line. Just a man who made it. After everything. Still here, still moving, still himself. That's what too much looks like from the outside. From the inside, it just feels like Tuesday.